Hi everyone, let's have a look at a daily chess puzzle. So I've selected quite a simple puzzle for tonight. As you can see on the screen, here is the puzzle itself. You can actually scan the QR code if you're viewing on your laptop or an iPad or any other tablet. So you can scan this QR code and get straight into the puzzle. You can try it out on the web version of Lichess, or if you're scanning it with your phone, you'll get straight into the app if you have it installed. So have a good look at the puzzle, and if you want to, you can try and solve it yourself first, or you can listen to my video. So we'll again try and apply the simple approach that I've suggested, 6 simple steps. This is not a extremely comprehensive approach, but it definitely works for solving some basic, intermediate, and advanced puzzles. So step 1 is understanding the position. So let's have a look what's happening here. So first of all, it's black's move. So we are going to have a look at the material first, whether it's equal or not, then at king safety, open diagonals, files, ranks, and evaluate each piece to see whether we can identify anything interesting. So first of all, let's count the material. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. So equal pawns. A rook, equal. Bishop and a bishop equal, but white have 2 extra pieces, a knight and a bishop, which prompts to a suggestion that we are obviously down the bishop and the knight. So overall, we are down in material, and since it's our move, we have to be extremely precise. We have to find an exact, very quick solution to this puzzle, and it has to be something with winning even more material, getting a promotion to a queen, or checkmating. So we'll have to be extremely quick. So second is king's safety. So let's have a look at king's safety. I think it's quite irrelevant to this position because white doesn't have any pieces that threaten a checkmate, not on the back rank, nor through any of these fields. The pieces are quite far away, so we're not threatened by a mate. While black actually can do a check on e1, and also the bishop is looking towards the king's position, but still it's a very safe position because the rook is protected by the knight, and there are no obvious threats to the king's position. So king's safety is fine for both sides. They're both safe. So, and we'll put that in our sort of template and take this into account. So it's equally safe. Open diagonals, files, and ranks. There's not much happening here in terms of open diagonals, files, and ranks. There is a bishop on a6, and that's pretty much it. So the final step, evaluating each piece. So we look at, so first of all, do we need to look at these pawns? Not so much, because as you can see, the focus of this puzzle is centered around something happening here. We only have got 2 pieces left, and they have to do something really quickly. This pawn is actually attacking the bishop, so and is very close to promotion, just 2 moves. So it's sort of so definitely this puzzle is centered around this pawn, this rook, which is in close proximity to the king, and this bishop, which stands on a very active diagonal. So this puzzle is pretty much not about these pawns or the king or the black's king. What about the center pawns? So we don't need to really worry about them since the capture, we recapture, but there might be a slight problem if we allow the promotion. So d6, d7, d8. However, the king will be on time to recapture that. So, and also this puzzle is not about these pawns. It's not about like playing h4, g4, or anything like that. So we only need to think about these crucial pieces and one pawn. So I think that's the first step in understanding the position. What is it about? So I think we've pretty much did a nice, decent step towards that goal. So overall, our understanding of this position, looking at the advantages and disadvantages, is that if we count the material, this is a disadvantage for black. Okay, so we'll put that, because we are solving this position from the black side, we'll mark it red. King's safety is equally safe. We won't mark it with green or red. Open diagonals, files, and ranks. I think if we don't take into account the material, then we are actually in a good position. We have a bishop on a6, and nothing else is happening in terms of these open lines. Evaluating each piece, very important in this puzzle is the location of the critically advanced c3 pawn. So all other pieces, they don't have an extremely important position as I see it. Step number 2, thinking about possible motives. We pretty much answered this question when trying to understand the position. Is this a position about checkmate? Well, it doesn't seem so. There are no immediate threats available to black. And as you can see, we only can give one check straight away, which is capturing the rook on e1. But then white will simply recapture on e1. So that's not going to be a big problem, and it's not a checkmate. Is it about winning a material? We are down by 2 minor pieces. We can, of course, recapture the bishop on b2 and we'll win just one minor piece back, but we can only do that after either exchanging the rooks or taking the bishop with the rook. So if we exchange and take on b2, then we're still down with a full knight. Is there a crucial outcome available? Yes, there is, because there is a critically advanced pawn on c3, which can go to c2 or go to b2 by capturing the bishop. Step number 3, identifying immediate threats. So we need to look, is there a threat of mate in 1 or 2 moves? Are we going to blunder something? Is anything hanging? So, and the answer to that question is that we have a rook which is hanging at the moment because it can be captured by the white rook. Also, white has a bishop hanging, which can be captured by playing cb. There is some tension in the center, so e file can capture the d pawn and vice versa. So there is a potential opportunity for white to go on to d6 and try and promote this pawn, so we need to be mindful of that as well. Step 4, establish candidate moves. So as you remember, we are looking at checks, captures, and threats. So we need to identify, let's try for this video, identify all possible checks, captures, and threats. So let's identify checks first. There is only one check. Rook takes e1, which is also a capture, but let's just put it as a check. Rook takes e1. Second, captures. We have c takes b2. We have e takes d5 and nothing else. So 1 capture, 2 capture, 3 captures. So 1 check, 3 captures. Are there any threats? Probably there are. So for example, we can push the pawn onto c2, and if white decides to take on b1, then we can capture and promote it to a queen. Of course, that's not going to be the best play from white because they'll be cooperating. They can do something like, so when we play c2, they can actually retreat the bishop or do something else. So they don't have to take the rook on b1. So we've recorded the candidate moves. These are 1 check, rook takes e1 check, 4 captures, rook takes e1 with a check, rook takes b2, pawn on c3 takes the bishop on b2, e takes d5, and a threat, sort of a threat, the promotion to the c pawn to c2. So 6 moves. Now, step number 5 is calculating. So we take the moves that we've determined on step 4, 6 moves, and calculate them. Okay, let's start. We need to start from checks, but actually in this puzzle, I believe it's going to be the winning sequence. So I'll start with the moves that don't lead to a win. So we need to calculate each of these 6 moves and determine which is going to be our which move is going to be the move of our choice. So first move is a check. Rook takes e1. It is forcing. There will be what kind of replies to rook takes e1? So the most obvious is going to be knight takes e1. Other replies such as bishop to f1 is terrible because we will capture the bishop with this rook, which is already on e1. So that's nonsense. So rook takes e1, knight takes e1 is 100%. That's going to happen 100%. So if we exchange that, we don't have much room for winning the game apart from this pawn. So we'll have to either advance it to c2 or take the bishop. Advancing the pawn to c2 after the exchange is going to be a terrible mistake because we won't be able to promote the pawn to the queen because of this bishop. And also the knight can simply capture on c2. Instead, after taking the rook, taking the rook back, we will play c takes b2. And then there is simply no defense against promoting the pawn to a queen. This knight won't be able to do anything. He has 2 moves towards the pawn, which is knight d3, but the pawn is already on b2, or knight c2, which doesn't help with controlling the field on b1. And also this bishop is useless. There is a pawn on e4. White cannot play on e4, protecting the b1 from advancement, nor they can do anything from f1, simply too late. So it looks like a winning combination. But we also need to be mindful of the d5 pawn. So if we take on b2, white can play d6. We promote. They play, for example, d7. And we have time to retreat the queen or take the knight with a check and then do everything else. Second is captures. So we already looked at this check with a capture, extremely forcing because we capture and give a check. The next is taking on b2 with a rook. Okay, if we take the bishop, we are still a knight down, and it's going to be hard to advance this pawn because of the moves such as knight to d4, protecting this c2 square, or, for example, rook to c1, attacking the c3 pawn, and also the potential advancement of this d pawn later on. So rook takes to b2 seems like a mistake. If we take c takes b2, we of course win the bishop, but we will lose our rook on b1. That's not the move that we want. So another capture is e takes d5, loses the game due to taking on b1. So we disregard this move as well. A threat that we determined as c2. White can play, for example, a bishop to c1, protecting from advancement of this pawn, blocking its advancement. And I think black are going to be in trouble. So looking at our list, we've actually determined that c2 doesn't work, e takes d5 doesn't work, c takes b2 doesn't work, rook takes b2 also doesn't work, rook takes e1, which is a check and a capture, seems like it's working. So we select rook takes e1 and go to step 6. Step 6 is pausing and reassessing selected move. We need to pause for a few minutes and think about whether the line that we've calculated is indeed correct. As you remember, our line was rook takes e1, knight takes e1, then we take on b2, and then whatever move white makes, we simply advance to a queen. So let's review that once again. Rook takes e1. There are two possible moves. Knight takes e1 or bishop to f1. Only two available moves. We still need to think about if they play, for example, bishop to f1, just in case. So if they play bishop to f1, and we already have captured rook on e1, and it's under attack by the knight. So we need to take the bishop with the rook, not with the bishop. If we take it with the bishop, then this knight will recapture our rook and we will lose the game. So rook takes e1, forced answer. The best defense is knight takes e1. Then we take on b2, and I cannot identify a possible move that will prevent me from advancing to b1. Knight to d3 attacks the b2, but we will play b1 with the check. Knight to c2 doesn't help, check, and advancing to the queen and the check. Bishop does not have any reasonable moves to protect from the advancement. They can play something like bishop f1. We will still advance the queen. If they take, for example, on a6, we can take the knight on e1. So I think the puzzle is solved. So let's play what we've selected. So the first move is correct. Of course, this is a forcing move. Take on b2, and there is nothing that white can do. So let's try stockfish. Yeah, so the best move that the computer suggests is bishop to f1. We can actually take on f1. Still, we are promoting the queen, but we also can promote the queen. If they take on a6, we take on e1. They will retreat the bishop, and we can do whatever we want. For example, take on e4 and easily win the game. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed this puzzle. Thank you very much. See you next time.